Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. In this session, we'll be looking at T-level industry placements and specifically helping students learn and giving them the right experience. We'll be using the experience of employers already hosting students to give you the latest insights and practical information. So I'm Kelly Googe, I'm your host for the webinar today. Here with me is Simon Shaw, who's one of our industry placement specialists delivering the session for you today. Just to let you know how the next hour will run, we are on broadcast mode, which means your microphones are muted. However, we're really keen to get you involved. So do send in your questions using the Q&A function on your Zoom toolbar. We'll answer these kind of as we go along, and I'll keep a check on those and make sure we get all your questions answered. Any technical questions or any general comments, if you could use the chat for those, I'll be here in the background, so any technical issues, I can support you from there. Also, just to let you know, we are fully recording the session and we will be sharing this and a copy of the slides with you afterwards, so you can refer back to you. So to get started, we've got a poll for you. We just want to see kind of who we've got on the call with us today and just see where you kind of are with your industry placement journey. So I'll just launch that for you now. So kind of if you could click the options there, where is your organisation currently at with industry placements? Let that run for a few more seconds. Okay, and that there. So looking at the results, kind of over 30% are already hosting one or more students. The next set are hosting one students and planning to expand, which is great news. And then we've got 20% kind of at the planning stage and looking to host students kind of this year. And then kind of around 7% just still thinking about hosting students and how they might go about that. So that's really interesting. Thank you. So yeah, I'll now hand over to Simon to take you through the agenda for today.
Thanks very much, Kelly, and good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you here. And yeah, it's really good that we're seeing that second point in the poll there really coming out much more strongly now, that many of you are already doing T-level industry placements. You're seeing the benefits and you're wanting to carry on and continue and maybe even do more. Fantastic position to be in. So big welcome for you. And just to reiterate the point that Kelly made about the Q&A in the chat, do let us know if there's anything that we talk about today as we go through that you'd like to ask about. And we'll have a quick pause at the end of each of these sessions to answer any questions if there are any, and use the chat if you've got anything you'd like to say. So those are things we're going to cover, and it kind of makes sense really. It follows a fairly logical sequence. So I think we'll go straight into it and ask ourselves, well, actually, what are we talking about here? What are learning goals? So just a quick exercise, have your fingers ready to type things into the chat. And I just want you to think for the moment of what single word occurs to your mind when I say the word goal or goals. So type that single word into the chat. Yeah, keep going. I'm beginning to see them. Oh, lovely. Yes, fantastic. Yeah. Good. Well, well done, because that's what we hope to see, exactly those kinds of things. And let me tell you what we've come up with when we've asked this question before. Achievement being the top one target, probably the second top in your list just now, objective, and some other ones too around ambition and purpose, aim, success, and milestone. Those are the kind of words that are associated with learning goals. And I think I wanted just to start with that. And we've chosen some pictures that try to illustrate all of those good things. I wanted to start with that little kind of thinking around goals, because it's interesting that we tend to think of a goal maybe as something that is kind of very much related to something practical and concrete, like an aspect of the work, or something to do with the T-level subject that they're studying, a bit of the curriculum, a bit of the skill or knowledge. It absolutely is. But the thing about these words is that they all carry quite a strong emotive and emotional impact. And goals are like that, aren't they? I mean, if we've ever had goals ourselves, we don't just want a kind of technical goal, something that says, yeah, this is what we're going to struggle towards achieving, or we're focused on the achieving. We're focused on the fact that this goal is something I want to do. It's a goal, you score it. We want to get there. So just a quick reminder that when we talk about goals, we can and will be talking about them in a technical sense, but we'll also be talking about them in an emotive sense. And I think all the evidence that we have is that employers like yourselves get that. You're really onto it. And I want to show you that now in this video.
In this video, you'll see how employers plan industry placements with colleges and training providers to give T-level students real and valuable experience of the work environment.
What we do is we work really closely with the colleges to plan our industry placements to make sure they're meeting the requirements of what the student needs, what are the areas that they need some improvement on, what opportunities do we need to expose them to so that they can do that learning that matches the curriculum but also supports the industry at the same time. What they're learning here on site links directly to their curriculums, so we try and relate it to what we know is going on in the curriculum so that they get that crossover learning, and so it's a richer experience.
And the idea is that Hannah wants to be a project manager, so she needs to have a sort of equal share of rotation around those people on site. We're an industry that relies on the UTC to try and bring in the next generation of talent, but we have to have that relationship because we can actually have a say on what happens in the curriculum. We can actually support them.
The most important aspects of planning and placement are working with the UTC right from the outset and understanding exactly what the student needs to cover as part of their placement.
What we do at the end of the day is we usually do a little diary so that she can refer back to her. I think she has a set list of objectives that she needs to achieve, so she can tick them off from that.
So we hold employer engagement meetings 6 times a year, and we speak through our intentions and their intention, and they've really been the driving force as well with us. To be honest, the employers did the work, really. We kind of just said that we are delivering this and we want you on board to do this.
We've sat down and gone through the syllabus and thought about what's involved in my particular role and how we're going to talk them through the key elements of what my role is, how we go about our role on a day-to-day basis.
We work very closely with lots of the organisations across the campus to develop our curriculum to make sure that we're delivering the qualifications that the employers on campus want so that students are well prepared for the jobs that they have on offer.
Placement's a great opportunity to link what students are learning in the classroom. So, for example, they'll learn things about patient safety, for example. They'll learn about statistics, they'll hear about the reports and everything, but it's only when they're here on placement that they can see how some of these events might happen.
So what we would do with our T-level industry placements would be working with our FE colleagues to identify the goals that they have for their course, what they would need to achieve, and at the same time be working with the T-level placement candidates themselves to find out what they want to get out of the placement. So we are both making sure we're ticking all the boxes for their course, but ensuring that they are able to tailor the learning to the experiences that they would like to get.
We're running a business, we're running an IT business, and we have lots of things that students could do. It should fit in with their college course, but we don't actually ask them, what are you doing at college? And then try and invent tasks for them to do. They come in and they do real work.
It's a whole different dynamic, and they might find that the things they learn in college isn't necessarily everything they need for the real world. So learning, different skills that they won't necessarily learn in the classroom, I think that's quite important.
At college, we've been creating posters, for example, our event management unit, and we do that on Canva. And here at Work Placement, we've been using Canva to do the posts on social media.
We've been doing website design quite a lot in my college course, so that relates here as I've been working on the CTEC website and other clients' websites.
So obviously I do programming as part of my course at Fareham, and I can bring that straight into my work placement with doing web development with the M10 Sports project.
Click on the links to see how to make the practical arrangements for industry placements and how to give students meaningful work and projects whilst they are with you.
Great. So, I mean, I don't know whether you noticed. Oh, well, let me move on the slides. Otherwise, we'll be stuck with this view of YouTube. No, I think I'll have to escape and come back in. Yeah, there we are. I don't know whether you noticed in the course of that video, we kind of had a bit of a kind of trajectory, a movement from the very beginning when Helen from the construction business was explaining what they do, and she's a planner. She plans the programs, and that theme was taken up during the other construction videos. You saw that employers, you saw people who run programs like Helen and Phil, you saw people who contribute to them like Jason in the workplace, like Haminda, and what they moved away, if you like, from pure planning to planning of the T-level, program and what's going to happen during the 10 weeks, to more of a kind of, well, how do we link this to the work? So Haminda's idea of, well, we do a diary every day that the student comes in, so that we can make sure that the work we're doing links back to her curriculum. And then that theme was taken up with everybody else, and that's when you started to get this idea that Jenny from the hospital was saying, Madden Brooks was saying, look, it is about planning, but it's also about making sure we relate everything we do to what the student wants and from the experience that we're giving them. And all of those things come into the mix when we're talking about goals. So I'll just show you some stills from those videos, and we'll pull out some of the points here. So the point about the experience and the activities that students do, needing to relate to their requirements on their course, but very much about improving their skill level, improving their understanding. And we got that a lot from the students themselves in that video, that it's only really when we get to work, and from Hannah, their mentor, their line manager and mentor, who says really it's only when they come to work and put these things into practice that we understand, that they understand really what's required, and they're upgrading their knowledge and skills, but also to think about the opportunities available. And again, that's an important point about goals, is that the student may not know the ultimate goal yet that they're going to end up with, if you like, when they finish the T-level placement. It's a formative process. They're still forming, in a sense, what that crossover is with what they're learning in the classroom and what their careers are going to be as well. Let's look at the next one. So yes, so here again, very much focus on quite specific small objectives for what's happening during that day. So the way in which Haminda, particularly there in the middle, was constructing the day for the student there is around exactly that. Well, exactly what it is that we're doing today that will help you both to do those things to do with your college work and your T-level qualification, but also that meets your interests. Here the Jason McHugh, the quantity surveyor there, saying that it's really helpful actually as an employer to know what it is the students are studying, because he can then pick up some of those key elements. And by the way, it's not necessary to have a really, really detailed understanding of the T-level qualification or the syllabus to do that. And the provider will certainly help. We had some great examples of providers talking today as well about how they do help you as the employer to see what would really benefit the student across the whole of the placement, but also specifically from day to day. And Jenny, I've already mentioned concentrating on the experience of the students, and Hannah saying it's only real work in the real world where the students really kind of change the nature of their knowledge and their skills, because they are applying it, they're using it. And I don't think we should underestimate what that is, what that means to students. It's a big step for them to take. It's a big step for anyone to take when you take things that you know and you turn them into know-how and doing and application and achievement and success. And also things go wrong and you mend them. Real work in real world. And Hannah's boss, the boss of her organization, who you saw on the video, Andy, saying, well, we don't start with a curriculum. We start with the work. We start with what we do. We're a small digital business. We do what we do, but we know that if a student comes in who's studying one of the digital T-levels, the software development T-level, then they are going to be given experiences that really benefit them. So that's just a bit of a snapshot of what what objective of goals and objectives are and how they work. So let's have a look now at an example. So I want to show you one from the T-level in media, broadcast and production, the particular specialism around content creation, and the role is a junior researcher content production. So a fairly general role. So here's an objective that you can set for the whole placement. So it's pretty broad because it's for the whole placement. Support the process of content creation. This is what the student will be doing by identifying, researching, developing ideas and presenting them to the team. So that gives the student that kind of overview of what it is that they're going to be doing during this placement. And then from that, you can then construct some learning goals. So these are the things that the student will be doing. It's almost like a scheme of work for the placement, isn't it? You're saying they're going to be doing the research, they're going to be understanding what resources are needed to create content, they're going to be doing the planning, they're going to be doing the work actually on creating, capturing content and transferring it. And then they're going to be doing all that general stuff around the systems, the metadata and the documentation. So those are all good goals to have in advance so the student knows what they're doing. And those goals translate, don't they, into tasks and activities. Again, we've put them here at a fairly general level. On a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, they would be broken down into smaller tasks, units of task, but that's really what the task look like. So you can say to the student, you will be doing these things. And I want to just pick out a couple of things about the way learning goals and tasks are stated, or some good practice in doing it. And you can see that each of those goals and tasks starts with a verb, with a word that is about doing. So you will be researching, creating, capturing, collecting. You'll be supporting. You'll be helping with planning, production. So you'll be plan, you'll produce, you'll maintain. And having that very active approach to goals and tasks and activities is really helpful for students as well, because that's the key thing for them about the placement, as I said already. It's not just that they're there to experience an environment of work, though that's massively important. They're there to do things. And it's in the doing of things that they learn things that they can't learn really in the classroom when they're not doing them. So it's a whole different class of goals, and they're really focused around learning by doing. You learn because you're doing. Of course, you come with some techniques. You might come with, a knowledge of JavaScript or whatever it might be, but then you're putting that into practice and you're learning wholly new things as well. So that's just an example of what a learning goals could look like. And from many of those examples, we can come to some general rules, I think, about them. So let's start with what it is that you're trying to tell a student about in a goal. And you've got to look at both sorts of skills. So the one we looked at now is quite technical. It was about, maintaining IT systems. It was about putting content together. But there's also employability skills as well, which are to do with, and we'll look at it later on, how you behave, how you act as a professional, as someone in work. So technical things are very important, but also don't forget those broader employability skills as well. And it's not difficult really for you or anyone in your organization to write those learning goals, because they are about doing the job. So you have an expectation of how people will work, of what they'll do. Both of those things, actually, what they'll do and how they'll do it when they're in that role. And those are the expectations that must be then transferred across to the student. So in a way, the interesting thing here is that thinking about goals like this takes us away from thinking of the student as a student to thinking of the student as someone who's a member of the team doing that work. Of course, they're always a student. We never really forget that. But at the same time, they're a member of the team. And that's where their learning is really enhanced and kind of really supercharged with you. Try and focus on what students should know and do. So it's about both of those things, as I've said, going together, using their knowledge, using the skills they already have to do things. And that's what you're going to be helping them to do on a day-to-day basis. So we'll have an example in a minute. But if we go back to Harminder on the construction site there with his young student, there he's saying, let's try and work out today specifically which aspects of laying foundations or whatever it might be that we're focusing on. What do you know about that? What are you coming to today with, and how are we going to enhance that by putting you in that position where you're doing those things or observing other people do it? A rule about general rule about learning goals is that they're not all at the same level. And I think what we're learning from talking to students and managers in businesses and organizations is that as the student settles in, gets comfortable with the work environment, shows that they can, do work at a certain level, then don't just stick at that level. It's really worthwhile having a bit of a gradient in. So progressively make the tasks maybe a little bit more challenging, maybe a little bit more independence for the student, so that they are gaining that incremental experience that comes when they do get asked to do slightly more difficult things and perhaps work slightly more independently. Clearly, it's very useful with the student to reflect what they've done back to what they're wanting to do. And that, by the way, is a dynamic process. And I remember talking with the student who's on the construction site with Harminder there at the end. We were videoing her, and she said at the end, well, I love coming here, for my day release when I come once a week onto site, because I end up knowing something at the end of the day that I didn't know I needed to know at the beginning, and so that changes my kind of view of what this job is and what I might be doing. And in fact, she changed her view from wanting to be one thing when she went in, a quantity surveyor, to wanting to be something else at the end, which is more of a general project manager. So those ambitions can change. It's a dynamic situation. And yes, we do have to make sure that it's not 100 miles away from the T level. That's where the provider can be massively helpful as well. So just some general rules about learning goals, and a couple of quotes here from people who do it. We'll take the bottom one. This is Alana from another digital business. We make a placement meaningful by tailoring it to the individual's course as well as the individual needs. So the employer wants to do that in this case, and I think most of you will. Because the student's embedded in a team, there is that chance really to get to know that student as an individual and to be flexible and responsive in the way that you construct the activities leading to their to the experience that they'll gain. And equally, there's Hasina from a college or college group, and the nice thing about what Hasina's saying there is that she absolutely recognizes that the student, when they leave the college to go on to a placement, they're with you, and you need to be involved, but we can help you from a college perspective. We can help you construct that placement so that it is doing valuable and useful work. So a nice kind of duality there. So we're at the end of that section. We'll go on to look at why learning goals are essential in a minute. But Kelly, do we have any questions that people have raised so far?
No, we haven't had any questions as yet.
Okay, good. Well, in that case, we'll move straight on. But do feel free, as I said, to pop any questions that you do have. And anything in the chat that we should mention, Kelly?
Nope, not at the moment.
Okay. Do keep contributing. Funnily enough, what we find very often is that the chat develops a bit of a life of its own in these events, and very often we get quite interesting strings of comments and suggestions and offers of help as well, and requests for help. So let's move on to the second question, which is about why are learning goals so important and so important to get right, actually. And I think there are two broad reasons about that. One is a kind of procedural set of reasons. You know, you want 10 weeks, it's not that long. 315 hours, you know, we're finding, by the way, that a lot of placements actually do go beyond that, but they're not that long, and therefore they need to be focused. We need to be putting the student to doing things that work for them. So keep that focus. What doesn't work at all is if a student is hanging around not knowing what they're doing, even for half an hour. That's very demotivating. Focused, so that their time is involved and so that their energy is applied to the work. That helps keep motivation high, as I've said. There's also a massive increase in confidence. And, you know, I see this a lot when I talk to students maybe who've been in the placement for a week or two. Already, they're changed. They're changed people from what they were when they came in on the induction, looking a little bit, you know, a little bit shell-shocked often, a little bit kind of confused and a bit worried. No, after a week or two, if the placement's well managed, they're not like that anymore, because they've been given specific things to do. They've had some quick wins usually. You know, they develop in strides really fast. Yep, it's about setting priorities and checking them out with a student. You know, is this right? Do you want to delve more into this JavaScripting, or should we move on to something else? Organizing the work so that it flows. And so that students get the chance to see end to end, if they possibly can. Very often, placement activities are organized around kind of projects or workflows that have a kind of linear progression to them. And it's really helpful if students can do that, if they can see, you know, a process in software development, you know, starting with the specification and ending up with a product. Equally, if they're in a healthcare setting, we'll come to that in a moment, it might be better to organize the work so they're doing a lot of different things and a lot of different teams in order to see that breadth of opportunity in you know, working in a hospital or a trust. The directing attention is a little bit about like focusing time and energy, and if you have goals, then it's a very clear benchmark, isn't it? Yeah, you aim to do this, let's see how far you've done. So there are those kind of procedural reasons why having learning goals is important. And just let's distinguish for a moment between the goal for the whole placement, that objective that we had in the digital example earlier, and then the goals that are a way of organizing the work week by week or day by day, which are much more specific and kind of tight and small scale. And progress can be measured on an hourly, daily basis, so that Harminder could say to Ashana at the end of the day, how have we done? How have you done? We had these things at the beginning, how have you done with those by the end? So that's really, really useful. And then we've got not just procedural, but as you'd almost expect, I think, some psychological advantages as well, because we know this from research done actually in different contexts, in academies, professional academies in the United States, that goals function not just in that procedural way, but they function in a psychological way as well, in that they enable and enhance students' ability to do these things, to kind of know who they are a little bit, to be able to see where they might be in the future, to do that reach forward, if you like. Definitely, we've talked about independence. They absolutely do. You give someone a goal, you scaffold them, you support them to get there, but it's their achievement at the end of the day. One of the reasons that students are telling us all the time they really love their placements and get so much from it is it's real work. You heard that Tom and Max from the digital business in the video saying exactly that. And all that, you know, we're into kind of education speak here, but the growth mindset, which is I'm not going to be, you know, say I can't do things. This is the mindset that says, well, I can do them. If I do this, I can do that. So you've got that sense of, you know, you're not locked into lack of potential, lack of ability, you escape from that and you say, well, look, I can do these things. And they help students realize something really important, which is this investment. If you invest time, if you invest energy in a productive, goal-oriented activity, you learn to value that time and you value that investment of energy as well. So those are the general advantages, if you like, of having goals, but there are also some specific advantages in work placements. And again, I divide them into two categories. There are those proximate or kind of immediate effects. So these effects, these beneficial effects happen straight away at the time that the student is on the placement. We've talked about them before. They become clearer about themselves. A lot of personal growth in placements. They become confident and they have a better judgment of their capabilities. And we often find that it works in it. It's a reality check. And students often say to us, well, I'm amazed really, because I knew you had to do these things at work. I didn't know you had to do those. I didn't know how to do them. I still can't, but I'm really excited by the possibility of going back and doing an apprenticeship and learning those things. So it forces, if you like, that reevaluation of what they're aiming to, the benchmarks that they have in themselves and where they're going to get to. And you see this transition. You absolutely see it unfolding in front of your eyes when you've got students. You've got those changes that you're seeing in them. It's amazing, really. It's very inspiring. But there are also longer term effects. What we call here ultimate. So proximate effects straight away, you see them. But ultimately, what you're creating through a really good placement is something that will last, frankly, a lifetime. And it lasts a lifetime because it's the first extended experience and structured experience of work and of learning at work that the great majority of T-level students have had. They're 17, they're 16, 17 and 18. They haven't been at work before. The way you give them a fantastic experience of work shapes their attitude to work and to themselves throughout the rest of their lives. It really is that important, which is why we think it's really worthwhile spending time to understand how goals work and what they do for students. And then just to end this section quickly, there's a little quote from one of the students in the hospital at Gateshead, and Samara, and she picks up on some of those themes. When I started the T-level, I wasn't like I am now. I'm a different person now. I now know what I really want to do because I've seen what the options are. So I started out with the general idea, that working in a hospital would be good. I've ended up with a very different idea of who I am, but also what the NHS is. And the intersection of that is, what can I do and who can I become by having a career in this hospital or in another part of the health service. So that's really powerful, really powerful. We're going to move on a little bit now to looking at that kind of sense of, well, how do you match goals to the tasks and projects that students are doing? Any Q&As to pick up on or chats, Kelly?
Nope, not in the moment.
Okay,
Any
good.
questions, do let us know.
Yeah, no, do, absolutely. So we'll move on. So look, I want to show you some pictures. And if you have a look at those pictures, let's do a quick one word in the chat. Write a word in the chat that for you, all of those pictures contain in them. Love it. I'm loving this. You've absolutely nailed it. All of those words that are coming up in the chat are exactly what these pictures show. They really do. Look, there are people who are working together. There are people who are communicating. They're obviously collaborating. They're obviously doing things together. Look, being on a placement is the opposite of an isolating experience. Even the top left one, the student there, she's in an office. she's looking at a printout of a project plan that she's been working on, but she didn't do it alone. How could she have done? She's there, and people are doing things together. And there she is next to with her mentor, sitting there at the computer designing that plan. The other thing that I'll just pull out from those pictures, you've got the main things there, is that they are all completely naturalistic in the sense that they show a workplace in action. And frankly, it's not always possible to tell who the student is and who the mentor is or who they're working with is. They're embedded in the work that they do. So there's nothing, there's nothing simulated about this. They're all real workplaces and people doing real things. And I think we'll get a sense of that in this next video.
I definitely would consider Cam to be my mentor. He's taught me a lot about the industry. He's given me a lot of great advice on how to improve my knowledge, improve my skills, and just generally improve my progress into the industry.
I wasn't that confident, honestly, last year, and I feel like this has really boosted my confidence, talking to new people and doing different things. It's really helped with that.
I would say one of the best things about the course is definitely the work experience, because it really ties together all of the knowledge that I learn and puts like context behind it in a real life perspective.
So we're getting from all of those very short clips, we're getting the same kind of message coming through, aren't we? About the tasks and the projects that students do are so important to them because they pull things together, but they pull things together with in a special way because of that relationship. And Pam was talking about Cam as his mentor. Tom there works very closely with Hannah, who we saw earlier on in the first video. I think the important thing there is exactly that these in this workplace, people are doing things together, and some of the things they do don't require any special kind of focus on the student or hand-holding. They're embedded in their team, they're doing work, they're supported by the team, they're supporting the team, but there's always someone with them, whether it be Cam, whether it be Hannah, whether it be Dan, working with the design student, who is helping to do the things that we talked about before, to focus, to organize, to prioritize, to make sure that the tasks are in fact, helping and doing what they should be doing. So here are some ground rules for people who are in that kind of role, and they're technical, but they're really, in a way, kind of obvious, but they're really helpful. So students do like to see the overall shape of their work, but they do need it to be broken down hour by hour, task by task, so that they can see what that next little bit of work they have to do, they have to finish. So there's a bit of a task with a bit of a goal and an end point and a time to that end point, and then the opportunity when they get to that end point at the end of the day, as with Haminda, or the end of an hour or a week, they get the chance to reflect on it. So getting that kind of granularity into goal setting is great. Set them an overall goal. Maybe there's then a task or a project for the week or for 2 weeks, but then within that, there's that finer grained, day by day goal. So that's not something you necessarily have to plan in advance, by the way. It's something that emerges from that broader project or that broader activity that the student is doing. It's just that, well, an experienced person doesn't need that level of specification. The student very often does. So make things small enough for them to digest quickly. Be flexible so that you can alter the pattern of work a little bit, or you can direct the student's attention to something else in that pattern of work so that they're concentrating on something they really want to go at, or where you feel they need to go back and do a bit more practice. Keep up that challenge. I was with a couple of students in an engineering environment just recently, and the line manager was fantastic because he was saying, I know these students now. I've had 5 weeks, 6 weeks of them. They're more than halfway through their placement. I know their capabilities, and I know that they thrive on me giving them that little bit extra to do. And that's what he does. So every day, if you like, is a bit of a new day. It's a bit of a challenge. There's always something in there to keep the student motivated and on their toes. Yeah, of course, you know, being supportive it's such an obvious thing to say, and it could be so banal, but it isn't. It means keeping your eyes open. You don't have to have eyes on the whole time. That would be disastrous. But keeping your eyes open for any signal that maybe the student, you know, needs a bit more help. Build a bit of a support structure around them from other people. Like you might say, okay, this week they're going to be working on this particular aspect of the job or this bit of the site. So we'll get someone there who's working on that site to be that kind of first responder, if you like. That person is just there to keep an eye on them and help them. Feedback is great, and it doesn't have to be, you don't have to wait ever to give feedback. It can be an odd word here and there. It can be something more reflective at the end of the day or the end of the week. But students thrive on feedback. And absolutely with that is part of the feedback actually is showing them what they have done, the difference that they've made to themselves through the work they've done this week. And of course, you know, being the person who behaves in the way that you're asking them to behave and demonstrates that same kind of eagerness and willingness to learn and to get better and to work to a high standard, which is all by leading by example. And then, as we said, encouraging from time to time the student to reflect. And I would say that there are two levels at which that reflection happens as well. There's the immediate thing to do with that particular task. And then there's a slightly broader thing. You don't have to do every time, but from time to time, reflection on, well, how's it going as a whole? You know, you've been with us 4 weeks now. You've been with us a couple of weeks. You know, what do you think? Is there anything I need to know about how it's going that would help to, you know, us to maybe change things over the next couple of weeks? So that kind of reflection, as well, perhaps as some more reflection on their own kind of behaviours as workers, people who are becoming professional, certainly learning what it's like to be professional, and people who are also seeing themselves as active participants, active learners, people who can control their own destinies to some extent. So there's some general rules to support projects, and now I'll move straight on and do this one. And if there are any questions, we'll pick them up after this, to do with the kind of technical tasks.
They're of course shadowing and learning and watching what our experienced staff do. But they soon get given the responsibilities and they actually do real live work on the project. So they're not giving work that's aside of the project. They're playing their part in helping deliver our projects.
So what Helen's there is saying is just that move from watching to doing to delivering. And I think that's quite a nice thing to think about. Yeah, look, it really helps if students sometimes can just see how things go at the beginning. They can observe, they can shadow, but pretty quickly they need to get on to doing, watching, doing, and then seeing the consequences of what they do, delivering, understanding that there's an output to every piece of work, and they're part of that delivery team delivering that output. So let's have a look at some of these examples of what technical activities could look like. We've got a couple here, so that you'll see here a couple of examples that we've picked out of the website that Kelly will tell you about at the end. So a project, a business improvement project for a business administration T-level student, and a few examples of project activities that they'll do when they're working on that project. I'm not going to dwell on these, they're just examples for you to look at. Another one from the engineering context, design development trainee, and again, a broad sense of what it is that they're doing in this project, and then the kinds of activities that they'll be doing. And those projects and activities, you can see that those things in bullet points there are pretty much goals. Actually, they're not, you know, they describe activities, but they describe them from what learners do, and having the doing as the goal is the important thing here. You might also concentrate on the outputs, as some of them do, like produce drawings. That's an output, but it's what they do that's really important here from those examples. And we can think of some general rules around constructing those projects and activities as well. Oh, by the way, here's the URL at the bottom of the screen there, which just takes you to more examples of the same kinds of things in different T-level course areas. So some general rules then about projects and activities, particularly ones that have a kind of technical aspect. So they're about the core work that students have to do to flourish in this environment, in this job. We've talked about challenging, we've talked about interesting. Varying is important too, because, okay, you might want to get a student working on a linear progression of a project through start to finish, but not just doing one thing, doing a variety of things. And that might be a bit artificial, because you might, in a normal project team, have people who do the same thing basically throughout the length of the project. Don't do that for a student, because they need to see different perspectives on it. So they might do more varied tasks than, if you like, an ordinary employee would do. Absolutely focus on the practical skills, because they're at the heart of most of the work we do. It has a practical bent to it. We are producing things. We're using our hands, eyes, brains to make things, to put things together, to get somewhere. So it's that practical, and also students who choose to do a T-level often choose it because of its practical nature, and they're with you because they get that chance to be realistic. And the others we've covered in already, I think, in enough.
We deal with IT, which is what a lot of the students coming in want to do. They get the chance to work on websites and social media. They get to see the mundane elements of what we do as a business. You get to see the full end-to-end of what really makes a business work. We put them on real work. We don't invent projects for them. We do a little bit, but most of the work we get them to do is actually customer-facing work. So some of it is adapting websites, doing social media posts, and even developing complete websites for our customers. They're doing something, they see it go out into the marketplace, and they see the results that come back from it, and they're the only people doing it. We're not doing it, they're doing it. But they see the output, the clients get to deal with the output, and they're delighted with how these things are going.
So yes, we actually prefer our customers with our T-level students in a meeting with us all together, because they're going to also come up with ideas that we haven't thought about, because that's where their skills are. That's where it is all about.
So it's great there, isn't it? Isn't to Andy and John? I love Andy's phrase, we're not doing it, they're doing it. Okay, Andy and his colleagues set up the work. They set up the project in the way that we've talked about just now. But they're, in a structured and supportive way, they're kind of handing it over then to the student to do it. And they're bringing the student, they're not kind of keeping them shy of anything that's involved. They're meeting customers. They're working with customers. Customers happily are delighted with it. But that idea that you're not putting students in bubble wrap at all. You are definitely helping them by providing that structure and support, but you're helping them in a sense even more by giving them that personal challenge to go and do it. And as Andy said at the beginning there, look, some of it's mundane work. It is. It's everyday work, stuff that we have to do. Let's let the student experience that too. It's not all bells and whistles, even in software. There's also some kind of stuff that you have to do every day. Let's give them a genuine balanced view, but let's absolutely do what John says here. It's what they do. And we'll hear Tom in a minute talk very inspiringly about that same idea.
The long-term benefits of T-levels to me are that there is a skills gap within the construction industry. It's only going to improve the quality of candidates that will be coming through the pipeline and ultimately reduce the skills gap. So since joining us, Serena's worked on a variety of architectural projects. She's worked with a mixture of the architectural team as well. She's worked on things from planning applications through to more technical elements, as well as taking a brief from people.
So you see Dan there, really, I think, talking about both of those things, aren't you? And he started off by saying something just worthwhile pausing and us reflecting on, which is, why are we doing this? Actually, why are we taking all this trouble to come on a webinar like this and to set up T-level placements in our organizations? Well, we're taking the trouble because it's going to solve a lot of problems for us ultimately. We need people like Serena here coming into the industry. we need people with that kind of ability to start the next phase in their career at a different level from if they hadn't done this. They know more, they've learned more on their course for sure, but on their placement with us for double sure, because they've been turning that knowing into doing. And that's just really the kind of magic of T-levels. And having that, I mean, what you saw there in that interaction between Serena and her mentor there was exactly what I was talking about before, that this is a joint process. Okay, Serena goes off and does stuff, but she's being kind of supported in what she does. And one of the things that you don't see on this bit of the video, you see it if you watch the whole thing, is Serena reflecting herself on what that has done for her, how she has grown and developed, and how she has also become much clearer about what she wants to get out of a career. We've got one more section to go before we finish. Kelly, let's just take a check. Anything to answer questions about yet?
Yeah, we have had a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Someone in the chat was asking about kind of finding providers, and they're sort of struggling finding providers in a specific management and admin. Is it on them to kind of search? I have pointed them to the employer's website where there's a search tool and kind of you can get them to contact you, but is there another way that they can sort of reach out?
Well, you know, it's a really good question. I'm
Yeah.
glad you've asked it, because finding a good provider is half the battle with T-level placements, and certainly with constructing learning goals for the whole placement. But really, find a provider on the website is the way to go, because it is updated very frequently. It will tell you if there's a provider doing management administration in your locality or where the nearest one is. There may be several providers, and you know, that gives you a bit of choice. If there aren't any in your area, actually it's quite difficult, because the students come via a provider, don't they? You don't get to advertise for students in the general public. They're doing a T-level, so they're therefore in a school or a college doing it, and that's the way you get access to students. What you can do, if you can't find a college or a school that delivers your particular interest, you know, the T-level course that you're particularly interested in locally, then it's really worthwhile talking to the colleges that deliver, or schools that deliver other T-level subjects, because they may be thinking anyway about, you know, doing a business administration one next year, or you might say to them, look, this is really important, can we maybe encourage you to do it? But fundamentally, find a provider and then work out from there.
Okay, thank you. Do you recommend tailoring individual learning goals for each learner on placement, or would you kind of say that they could be general for a whole group?
It's a really good question, and I think you can. It depends on the level. I think you can create fairly high level learning goals and plans for a whole group of students. And at that level, they're not going to be that differentiated. So the examples we gave earlier in manufacturing and engineering and in digital or business, they're not going to be that different. Those are the kinds of things that students in that role are doing, because it's what that role involves. So at that level, they can be the same. I think at the level of the individual, what happens then is that daily, weekly decision about what activities are done, and therefore what the student is aiming to do, absolutely is individual. And it is an individual, because everyone is a bit different. And even if you've got 5 students in the same workplace doing the same kind of thing, they're still going to be a bit different, because one student wants to do this and another one wants to do that. And it's really good to have that responsiveness, so it's not too constricted. So I think a combination of both is the best way to go.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Well, let's move on then and to the last point, which is I mentioned a couple of times earlier, that T-levels are not just about technical skills and practical skills, they're about professional skills as well. So let's see what they're about.
When students spend time here in the workplace, It's really beneficial for them because they get used to working hours rather than student and study hours. They get used to workplace etiquette, so some of the unspoken rules that everybody has in their places of work. But most importantly, they get to be in an environment where they see other professionals working.
So Annika there, who looks after the students at Addenbrooke's, is wonderful because she understands really that what the student is doing, yeah, they're certainly learning a lot of technical things about how to do their job on a ward or in a lab, but they're learning these other things that to work successfully in the health service are just as important. It's about values, it's about having that human-centered approach, it's about having that empathy, about developing those quite tightly defined professional skills and values that you have to work in that environment. Better healthcare example. I think that there's different values, but the same general approach is going to work everywhere. So we have a kind of framework which T-levels incorporate, which are not around technical skills, but they're part of these broader employability and professional skills. And this is what they look like. They're about communicating. They're about displaying professionalism in the way that Annika was talking about it, which is about that etiquette, about that understanding of, as a professional, this is how you relate to a patient or a customer, as John and Andy would inculcate in their students. That you work well as part of the team, that is so totally part of this. And students are so up for it too. They love being embedded in teams. It's a wonderful experience for them. They're not on their own. They're working with other people. And you're geared towards producing results. And those things are built in to the behaviours and attitudes, which are part of the T-level curriculum, really. So students will know from the beginning that when they're on a placement, they have to have those behaviours. And there's an example. This is a particular provider which has taken those broad, that broad kind of sense of what is involved in being a professional and having those employability skills, and then created a much more detailed list of what that means, the things that you need to do under that heading, that quartile of the diagram above. What does actually displaying professional mean? It means all of these things and others as well. Just as an aside, a provider produced that, so that's helpful. Most providers will have, T-level providers will have those kinds of things. So you don't have to do it, but it's worthwhile knowing what their understanding of professionalism is, because that's what they'll try and prepare the students with before they come. It's what you'll be helping them to develop, and you might want to, a part in maybe saying, well, actually, these things are really important for us. So you can imagine Annika saying, yeah, but we just need a bit more here on how that works in a healthcare workplace. And just a couple of words then to end with from me about how you develop that professionalism. And again, it's about, it's about the obvious things. It's about watching, seeing how other people behave, learn from what they do, ask about it for sure, interrogate it, and then try it for yourself in situations that may be, slightly challenging at the beginning, becoming more challenging later on. And there are some lovely examples, and you'll find these on the website that Kelly will talk about in a minute, in the case studies, where we see exactly that happening, where students towards the end of their placement are really wanting to do that, to test their professionalism, if you like, their understanding of what these values, these expectations, these behaviours are in settings that are in situations that perhaps might be a bit more difficult. So Tom and Max with students, with employers and with customers, talking to them and doing work with a customer, that's a big thing. And then that opportunity then to always reflect on what it is that the student has actually learned. So, unless there are any last and final questions, Kelly?
No. Does anyone else have any questions before we just go into the final steps and support? No, don't think so.
Okay, well let's end then with just a bit of a preview from Kelly of how else we can support you. Oh, and some other polls actually. A couple of quick polls before we do.
Yeah, a couple of quick polls, if you wouldn't mind just answering these for you. It's just so we can sort of look at our support and what we're offering and the webinars that we're doing. If you could answer those 3 questions on screen, that would be brilliant. Everyone's saying it's been really useful, so that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And then the final poll is just around kind of, I know many of you are already hosting. For those of you that are planning to host, do you have any ideas on kind of when and when you might be thinking of taking on students if you are planning to do so? Okay, we'll end that one there. Thank you so much. So yeah, so I just wanted to let you know about kind of the next steps and support we can offer you. If you want to find out some more for yourself, have a look at those free tools and resources that Simon mentioned. They'll help you to plan and prepare for industry placements. You'll find those on the website we've mentioned there. You can book on to any other upcoming webinars that take you through more of the detail around planning placements. Importantly, as part of this program, you can also access some free bespoke hands-on support. So that's kind of sending in questions, arranging a one-to-one support call with a specialist like Simon to talk through any aspects of placements. If you wanted a session with your internal team, for example, or with other employers within your supply chain, we can facilitate that for you as part of this program. We are also running a face-to-face conference on the 25th of June in Nottingham. If anyone is interested in joining us, that gives you a great opportunity to talk through kind of practical insights and network with other employers as well. So if you would like to join us for that one, please do have a look. And finally, thank you. I hope you have found the session useful. Thank you for joining us. As I said, we will be sending out a full recording and slides. Feel free to share those widely within your own networks as well. And please do get in touch for any additional support you might need, and have a nice day and a nice evening. Thank you, Simon.
Thanks. Bye-bye, everyone.